Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started, and people are still signing on so they can join us as we start to move forward in our webinar. I want to thank you for joining us today for Foreign Trade Zone Capital Region Opportunities. I'm Kate Maynard. I'm the Director of Planning and Economic Development with the Capital District Regional Planning Commission, and we serve as the grantee, the General Administrator for the Foreign Trade Zone 121 here in the Capital Region. I'm joined here today with our two co-sponsors for this webinar. We have the Center for Economic Growth. We have Katie Newcomb here, welcome. And we also have the Port of Albany, Megan Daly here as well. Welcome to both. We also have ISCM Inc. They're our National Foreign Trade Zone Consultants, who I will introduce after a brief introduction we'll get into just now. So why are we here today? This session will provide an awareness to the Foreign Trade Zone program, how it can directly benefit companies with an import component, and also how you can get directly involved in the program. We'll be speaking to different perspectives that you all represent. So you see on the right-hand side here, from if you're a manufacturer that imports, if you're a supply chain participant, if you're a business or economic development partner, you may be that really important link to the overall program and benefits for a company that could benefit, or potentially you're a commercial broker or a warehouse operator. Of that, I would put a giant asterisk as to the need for more foreign trade zone warehouse space in the capital region, something we get calls on quite frequently. We're going to learn about the direct benefits for import activities into the capital region, and also hear about the network of 195 active foreign trade zones around the US and benefits related to that. This one, we're going to take a stroll down memory lane and look at the introduction of the foreign trade zone to the capital region. So in 1985, the foreign trade zone was established for the original area of the 4 counties you see here. So Albany, Rensselaer, Saratoga, and Schenectady counties. It offered companies in major regional industrial sites access to a new, for then, economic development tool. What was important back then is that these were fixed sites. And so they're listed here what those original sites were focused on. So activities in the Northeastern Industrial Park, the Rotterdam Industrial Park, and the Port of Albany, also here today for consistency and history. And also just a note, kind of a nod back to 1985, on the right is one of the original Foreign Trade Zone 121 marketing materials, a mailer, something that we're seeing less and less of as we kind of go more and more into the digital era. Fast forwarding to today, the Foreign Trade Zone 121 consists of those 4 original counties that I mentioned, but it's also expanded, you can see in the colored areas here, to also include Columbia, Greene, Fulton, Montgomery, Warren, and Washington counties. So in total, it's a 10-county area. It's also been modernized to what's called an alternative site framework. What that does is provide the ability for a site to be more easily integrated within the 10-county area and enjoy the benefits quicker. For many users, the benefits of the foreign trade zone can be utilized by a company for many, many years and serve the company even as it grows, changes, and adapts. Here we have a local example and long-term FTZ user. You see here on the left-hand side in the 1990s, the origins of today's company, which is Sterling Organics, Winthrop, NICMED, and then also what that has evolved into today, AMRI. A large, great business within the capital region focused on pharmaceuticals. And I believe we have someone here today joining us from AMRI, so thank you for attending and glad you're here with us. At this point, I want to highlight the duration of the webinar and quickly get into things. So we'll be hearing from our speakers from ISCM Inc. We'll then translate or transfer to Foreign Trade Zone Q&A. So those burning questions you may have developed over the space of the webinar or things that you would like to know about the program. And then we'll talk about some next steps for those interested in getting more involved in terms of what those are. So it's my pleasure to now welcome our presenters, both Melissa Ehrman and Sean Leiden from ISCM Inc. They are a Washington, D.C. based consulting firm dedicated to the unique challenges of organizations with international supply chains. We'll start with Melissa. She is a senior vice president who specializes in FTZ setup and administration, compliance technology implementation, audit preparation, and training required for trade compliance success. Melissa is an accredited zone specialist and serves as chairwoman of the board of directors for the National Association of Foreign Trade Zones. Sean Lydon is president with over 25 years of government compliance experience, including as an FTZ operator. Sean and his firm have helped companies and government organizations set up and operate successful supply chain security and FTZ projects across the U.S. Sean currently serves on the U.S. Customs and Border Protection COAC. That translates to the Commercial Customs Operations Advisory Committee, which indeed is a mouthful. With that, I'm going to hand things over to Melissa and Sean, and note that while learning all things FTZ, that you may have a little bit of fun as well. So without further ado, Melissa and Sean, I'm not sure if Sean's on just now, but I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Kate. Not sure where Sean is, but in the meantime, let's learn a little bit about our audience. I'm going to do just a couple of polls so that I can get an idea of who's listening to our presentation today. So with that, let me know, give me an idea about your current FTZ knowledge. Maybe you've been listening about this program for quite a while and you're ready to jump in. Maybe you're already set to go. Or maybe you've just been learning a little bit about it, but you still have a few questions. Or maybe this is your first exposure to the program. You're just now realizing that that FTZ is a thing, and so you want to learn more about it. I see a few of you are kind of in that category. Or maybe you just saw Kate's email and said, save money, that's me. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I want it. So I'll give you just a couple more seconds to give me a little more feedback. Let me know where you are on the FTZ knowledge. Well, it looks like we have a pretty wide variety, actually, including some folks that are ready to start. So that's super exciting. And a lot of you have some questions. So I think today will be a great opportunity for you to get some of those questions answered. Let's also take a moment and find out what kind of organizations that you are with. So let me get an idea. Are you in manufacturing, distribution? Maybe you're a third-party warehouse operator. So distribution would be if you're distributing your own products, or if you are a third-party warehouse operator, which you're housing other people's materials. I see we also have quite a few economic development folks on the line, which, as Kate said, can be a fantastic bridge and gateway. You're looking for information to share with your prospects and your clients. I'll give you just a couple more seconds, or perhaps you're a service provider like a lawyer, tax accountant, customs broker. You too have direct access to folks who are directly impacted by this program. So if I take a look at our results, looks like a large portion of you are in the economic development arena, which is fantastic. We have some great information that you can share, helping your folks get interested in the program and get them started quickly and up and running. We also have a distributor and some service providers, so good to know. I still don't see Sean, so but I do have, it looks like I've got one more introductory poll. Let me open the. Which men's hockey team won the NCAA Division Hockey Championship in 1985? That's an interesting question. Anybody got some guesses here? Union or Minnesota? Hi, Sean. I did mention. Did you put this poll in here?
I sure did.
Well, it looks like the majority of our folks knew that RPI won the 1985. Does that have anything to do with this this jersey that you're wearing?
Yes, that was me. Well, is today the day we're supposed to talk about hockey?
No, we're not talking about hockey, Sean. These folks may be from the area near your alma mater of RPI, but today's the day we're talking about foreign trade zones. Remember that?
Foreign trade zones? That doesn't sound very exciting. Stanley Cup playoffs are about to begin.
Well, that's exciting, but so is the U.S. economy recovery. We hope that's starting soon, too.
Exactly my point. It's been a little chilly, but spring has finally come to the Capital District. The daffodils have just finished and all kinds of flowers are blooming. We have gas back at the pumps, Hockey playoffs are around the corner, and pandemic restrictions are getting better every day. Why would we want to spend an hour talking about a 90-year-old program out of Washington?
Well, Sean, if there's one thing we learned in all this pandemic, it was that we can't have all our eggs in one basket. The economic downturn caused by the pandemic was really uneven in its treatment of area businesses. I mean, some couldn't find enough workers while others couldn't find any customers. And now that we're able to look back on the experience, it's a good time to think about diversifying our economy and adding jobs that can survive a shock like a pandemic or a drastic gasoline shortage.
And foreign trade zones do that?
That's exactly why they were created by Congress almost 90 years ago. Foreign trade zones, or FTZs as most people call them, are an excellent economic development tool to help attract and retain international businesses. FTZs are not the answer for every business problem, but in some industries, FTZs are an absolute must in order to remain globally competitive. That makes understanding how the program works and who it's for well worth our time today.
Okay, I'm starting to get your point. What exactly is a foreign trade zone anyway?
Well, a U.S. foreign trade zone is a secure area near a port of entry into which foreign materials brought without paying duty.
What does near a port of entry mean, Melissa?
Well, generally it means your site has to be less than 60 miles or 90 minutes from a U.S. Customs office, but there can be some exceptions.
That sounds easy. Once I establish my FTZ as a site, what can I do with it?
Well, within that secure area, there are quite a few things that can be done with your import material. Some zones are distribution facilities into which products are brought, stored for a period of time, perhaps relabeled or repackaged or maybe changed in quantity, and then ultimately sold and shipped to a customer. And then other zones are actually manufacturing facilities into which components are brought and assembled into finished goods that are sold and shipped to a customer. And in the process, there may be goods that are damaged or destroyed.
Is there anything you can't do inside an FTZ site?
Well, there's actually a small list of activities that can't take place in a foreign trade zone. You're not permitted to manufacture alcohol or alcoholic beverages, and you can't manufacture tobacco products, and you can't manufacture firearms. Now, it's possible to store these items in a zone purchased from a supplier that ships them to the zone, and then while in storage, they're duty and excise tax free. But these items can't actually be produced within the activated area of the zone. And you can fulfill orders from a foreign trade zone, but you can't exchange money or execute what's called retail trade within the activated area of a zone. And an interesting side note, their statute actually prohibits car repair in a zone.
Melissa, sometimes the products we used to make in our factory needed to be repaired. Can other kinds of products be repaired in a zone?
Oh, yeah, sure. The prohibition against car repair in a zone is meant to prevent foreign trade zones from unfairly competing with auto repair shops, who may also need to import parts. Almost all other types of products, whether manufactured in the zone or not, can be repaired while they're stored in a foreign trade zone. Oh, and by the way, you also cannot have residents in the zone, so no long-term sleeping on your office couch.
What types of organizations use the FTZ program?
Well, that's a good question, Sean. So any operation that works with imported products can use the program if they can show that doing so will help them be more competitive in the U.S. or global marketplace. So because there are duty benefits, the government requests confirmation that there's a community good to be had by giving the applicant these benefits. And so also companies serving such organizations may wish to participate in the program as well. By activating a warehouse, for example, through which their customers transport their goods, a 3PL can provide a bonded supply chain to their clients and save them money, usually for a service fee.
Melissa, do you have any recent examples of how such an old federal program is still relevant today?
You bet, Sean. So you may have seen that the FTZ user Pfizer admitted the first batches of COVID-19 vaccine to the United States to prepare for rollout. Now, before its vaccine was approved for use in the U.S., it was still illegal to import those drugs into the country. So the vaccine could, however, be brought in and stored indefinitely in a foreign trade zone while the various vaccines awaited FDA approval to import and distribute them. The FTZ program played a critical role so that those vaccines could be staged around the country and deployed to the vaccination sites the instant approval was granted. Pretty cool.
Wow, that's amazing. Can we talk more about the financial benefits companies receive when they operate as a foreign trade zone?
Oh, sure. So because imported duties are not paid on goods brought into a U.S. foreign trade zone until those goods are removed and transported into the U.S., there are a variety of benefits the company receives, including inverted tariffs, a reduction of certain import and export-related taxes and administrative costs, deferral of duty payment, and in some cases, complete elimination of the duty. You may also benefit on domestic inventory and equipment if your state has ad valorem taxes on these materials. And this can be a big benefit for the zone in certain states, including Texas and Arizona, for example.
Melissa, what do you mean when you say inverted tariff?
So that's a good point, that's a good point, Sean. Imported tariffs are usually set up to favor manufacturing here in the U.S. So that means that the duty on components is less than the duty on finished products. So companies have an incentive to make their goods here. But there are about 18,000 different tariffs in the United States, and sometimes they accidentally work in the opposite direction. We call those tariffs inverted because they favor production of finished goods outside the U.S. That's where the FTZ program steps in to give U.S. manufacturers the same duty benefit as a factory in another country. This is a major benefit of foreign trade zones, and manufacturers with imported components could do the math to see if this benefit applies to them. The concept of inverted tariff can be a little challenging at first, so it might help to walk through a real-life example. So tires for automobiles, for example, can be imported at a duty rate of 4%. Now, wheels for automobiles can be imported at a duty rate of 2.5%, a lower duty rate. If we mount the tire onto the wheel before importing it, the duty rate remains 2.5%, which is 1.5% reduction in the duty paid on the tire. This same activity can take place in a foreign trade zone, thereby reducing the duty on each and every tire by 1.5%. The more tires you process, the more you save. And the duty savings are not limited to just one item. All of the foreign material that's mounted on the wheel would be capped at the same 2.5 duty rate. So there can be savings on other components that are purchased from foreign suppliers and assembled into the wheel as well. This allows U.S. companies to produce its wheel and tire assemblies using U.S. labor and still sell it at a competitive price to any non-U.S. manufacturer that would pay 2.5% duty to get their wheel and tires assembled in the U.S. market. It's also important to note that the same can be done with production equipment with certain conditions that are brought into the zone to ultimately manufacture a product. So let's say you're starting up a brand new plant that is eligible for production benefits, and a lot of your equipment that you're going to be using in the plant comes from a foreign manufacturer. You can bring that equipment into an activated area without paying duty, and no duties are paid until the plant is actually brought online and is producing the item for which the plant was built. And if that final stage assembled production item has a lower duty than the individual components used to build it, you can pay duty at the lower rate, which is sometimes zero, thus eliminating the duty for the production equipment components altogether.
Melissa, that brings up a great point on the proper timing of your FTZ project. Sooner is better than later. A mistake I often see is that applicants focus on the production benefits of their zone and forget those same benefits apply to equipment. You can only take advantage of equipment savings if your zone is activated before the equipment arrives. So the sooner you start the application process, the more opportunities you have to capture savings using the program. While inverted tariff is a big benefit for manufacturing FTZs, there are other savings for companies operating in the zone. Import duties on goods made or stored in a foreign trade zone aren't paid until they're actually shipped to a customer in the United States. This means companies are able to defer the payment of duties until the merchandise is sold, matching expense with revenue. This is a major benefit for both manufacturing and distribution companies, especially those subject to anti-dumping, Section 301, or Section 232 additional tariffs on their imported merchandise.
Yeah, and another benefit relates to the fact that most foreign trade zones are permitted to make a single U.S. customs entry for all the merchandise they ship to the U.S. during a single week. Now, for large importers, this can dramatically reduce federal and other fees paid with each customs entry, since most zones will only file 52 entries per year. Some FTZs also opt to self-file rather than pay outside providers to do the filing, because the zone operation brings them much closer to the data used for the preparation of each U.S. customs filing.
Finished goods brought into a warehouse operating as a foreign trade zone can be exported to any country without paying any U.S. customs duties or fees. This benefit is one of the original reasons the Foreign Trade Zone program was set up in the first place back in 1934. Goods manufactured in the zone can also be exported outside of North America without paying any U.S. customs duties or fees. This is a major benefit for manufacturers who sell their products internationally. FTZs are the only way a U.S. factory can avoid paying anti-dumping, Section 301, or Section 232 additional customs duties on their merchandise for export.
That's right, and that's a big topic these days. And also, many foreign trade zones are eligible to receive direct delivery benefits from U.S. Customs. Direct delivery allows a zone to move goods from a U.S. port directly to their facility without filing a customs entry. This helps smooth the flow of import goods and raw materials to the foreign trade zones and can greatly improve supply chain velocity for a company.
Foreign trade zones don't pay duties or fees on merchandise destroyed in the zone. The same goes for merchandise which becomes waste, either by accident or as a byproduct of a manufacturing operation. Duty on items that can be recycled are paid on the lower value of the recyclable material. This could be a major benefit of the Foreign Trade Zone program, especially for manufacturing companies.
Yep, and import merchandise can be transferred between zones without paying any U.S. customs duties or fees. This can be a benefit to companies that are a part of a larger supply chain. So, for example, if the product you manufacture may eventually be exported, transferring your material using zone-to-zone procedures may allow your customer to completely avoid the payment of U.S. customs duties and fees on your products.
The new Section 232 duties on steel and aluminum include quotas for merchandise imported from many different countries. Foreign trade zones are allowed to accept material even after the quota is full. The merchandise can then be shipped into the United States after the quota reopens. You can also use your foreign trade zone to time the payment of duties on items subject to tariff quotas to minimize the amount of duty paid. The recent increase in the use of trade remedy tariffs in the U.S. has had an impact on FTZs. It's important to stress that FTZs are not exempt from the trade remedy tariffs if the admitted foreign material is later shipped into the U.S. Inverted tariff benefits cannot be claimed on merchandise subject to these tariffs, and so a higher amount of such tariffs has reduced FTZ benefits in affected zones. It has also renewed the focus on exporting from an FTZ. As mentioned earlier, if the goods do not enter the U.S. commerce and are directly exported from the zone, no duties are paid, including the trade remedy tariffs. So it is possible to admit these materials into the zone and either ship directly to a non-U.S. customer or incorporate them into a finished good that is shipped to a non-U.S. customer and not pay any trade remedy tariffs. Foreign trade zones are the only option that give you flexibility to avoid these tariffs. Because of the volatility we've seen in imposing, increasing, and decreasing of these tariffs, the administration required to keep up with the changes has increased.
That's right, Sean. So we've covered a lot of material, and since we can't see the audience, how about we take a quick poll just to make sure everybody's still with us. So I'm going to launch a question about how foreign trade zones save money. So which of these items on this list do you think is a mechanism through which foreign trade zones save money? Inverting tariffs when permitted, consolidating shipments to reduce fees, deferring tax payments until sale, and eliminating duties on scrap, waste, and exports, or maybe all of the above. Which of these do you think are FTZ benefits? Well, it looks like everybody's still with us, Sean, because we have quite a bit of respondents to our poll, and they're paying attention because everybody realized that all of these are benefits of the FTZ program. So good to know that we still have everybody paying attention.
Great.
So we don't have time in today's session to go into too much detail about the specific calculations you can make to determine the exact financial benefits of the program we'll have for your company. But you can get those questions in if you have any. I think we forgot to say at the top, but you can always put questions in the chat box, so we'll take those at the very end. But we will answer as many as we can today. And also Kate, who arranged for this webinar, is arranging special one-on-one sessions with anyone interested in learning more about the FTZ program and how it can benefit your individual circumstances. So Sean, now that we've gone through some of the various ways FTZs can save money, let's talk about the key players in the FTZ program and the role that each one plays. So when we refer to a user, we're talking about the entity whose merchandise creates the financial benefit of the foreign trade zone. Now, this is the company that's using the zone to process their imported inputs. This may or may not be the entity that's the official operator of the zone, and so the user may or may not make their own filings. They may leave that to an entity that's operating the zone while they're just having their goods routed to and from the zone.
The FTZ operator is the entity responsible to Customs and Border Protection for making sure the zone is run properly. The operator is also responsible for making sure all of the proper filings are made to CBP regarding the zone operation. In the case of many individual importing companies operating the zone, they are both the user and the operator of the zone. This is true of most subzones. But the operator may be a service provider, as was mentioned earlier, that is allowing users to bring their goods into the zone to receive the benefits of the zone program. It is the operator that obtains a bond for the operation, and it is that bond that is held liable for anything that goes wrong in the zone. The operator may or may not be the importer of record for the merchandise in the zone. And a single zone may have multiple companies operating within it, or multiple users moving merchandise through it, each doing their own reporting activity within the zone.
That's right, Sean. And we actually see this multi-user zone concept in several third-party operated warehouses. So this is a case where the owner of the warehouse is the operator of the zone, and those that request to put their goods into the warehouse are the users. The operator has a competitive advantage in selling warehouse space because users benefit from the duty deferral or potential elimination that if they export from the warehouse. And these are the cases that Kate mentioned earlier that she gets a lot of calls about.
We should also talk about the importance of the grantee, like Kate. A grantee is the local representative of the Department of Commerce, helping to administer the program by ensuring the FTZ is being used for the public good of the local area. When a company wants to file an application to establish an FTZ site or subzone, it is the grantee that actually files that application with the Foreign Trade Zones Board on behalf of the company. And the grantee is a major contributor to that application. Grantees can be public or private entities and are often involved in the economic development of the area. They receive a grant of authority for a foreign trade zone and then promote the use of that FTZ to draw economic activity to the area. Zones must operate as a public utility and be transparent in those operations. This requires that they publish a schedule of the rules, regulations, and any fees applicable to their zone.
Another very important entity in any FTZ operation is the port director. The zone program is administered in part by the Department of Homeland Security. Specifically, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, also known as CBP, has regulatory authority over all imports and exports, including those occurring via the FTZ program. So CBP lays out regulations for most, but not all zone activities. Those regulations include a lot of language that gives the local CBP representative, or the port director, latitude on how he or she wishes to regulate details about the activity in a specific zone. This leads to varying practices port to port about what is and is not required or allowed in FTZs. Some of this port variability was eliminated when CBP launched their new Automated Commercial Environment, or ACE, which is a system through which CBP now collects FTZ filings. That system has a great deal of data validations that require certain data elements in specific situations, and stopped many of the unique requirements some ports had for paper filings of the past. For a new zone to be activated, the port director must approve, and the zone must file an annual activity permit with the port director to keep him or her apprised of activity in the zone.
In addition to the Department of Homeland Security, the Zones program is administered by the Departments of Commerce and Treasury. The FTZ Act of 1934 established a Foreign Trade Zones Board to execute the requirements of that statute, and that board consists of the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of the Treasury. The Secretary of Commerce is the CEO of the FTZ Board, and it is the Department of Commerce that publishes board orders related to FTZ activity after getting concurrence from the Department of the Treasury and CBP. Currently, there are about 10 people on the staff of the FTZ Board that administer the program, including producing the annual report to Congress about the program's achievements. They also assess individual applications for FTZs and prepare them for publication and approval by the FTZ Board. The Executive Secretary of the FTZ Board, currently Andrew McGilvray, manages that staff and executes business such as minor boundary modifications that don't require approval of the board itself.
That brings up a few more important terms that we should introduce that are very critical to the FTZ program. Goodness knows there's a lot of acronyms to learn when you're dealing with the federal government. Now, we mentioned earlier that over the years, many changes have been enacted that makes the FTZ program easier to use. One such change began in 2008 when the FTZ board established an alternative set of procedures as an option for grantees in how they operate their FTZ. This alternative site framework is often referred to by its acronym ASF. So under the ASF, the grantee establishes what's known as a service area, which Kate mentioned earlier. That's been negotiated with CBP. Then a company with a facility inside that service area can ask for that portion, for a portion of that area, be allocated to its facility so that it can operate within the FTZ program and receive the benefits of the FTZ program. To keep things separate, the old procedures were termed the traditional site framework, or TSF, which set of procedures you use to establish your zone site determines the specific applications that must be filed and how long it'll take to get those applications approved. And even if your local zone is organized under ASF, your location may be outside that ASF area. This doesn't mean you can't operate as an FTZ. You just have to apply using the original TSF procedures. Under ASF procedures, though, a request to establish a zone site or subzone is called a minor boundary modification. And you may recall that the FTZ Board Executive Secretary can process these directly, as Sean mentioned. This can be a big time savings when applying to receive FTZ benefits. These boundary mods, as we call them, don't require public comment as some of the other parts of the FTZ application process do. And this accommodation, along with staff processing by the FTZ board, means that approval is almost always granted in 30 days or less.
Under this alternative site framework, you can apply for one of two types of facility designations: individual zone sites and subzones. Zone sites may have multiple users and/or operators, but there can be only one location. So if an operator has multiple non-contiguous parcels of land that need to be activated as an FTZ, a single zone site might not be your best option. A subzone can consist of more than one non-contiguous parcel of land, as long as your grantee is eligible to sponsor all of the parcels. In this case, The applicant can apply to designate multiple locations as a single subzone. Keep in mind that subzones generally must have a single use or purpose. Subzones can also be designated under the traditional site framework, or TSF, if your location is outside the ASF service area of your grantee. As we mentioned, that service area in FTZ 121 encompasses 10 counties in upstate New York. Traditional site framework subzones, however, take 3 to 5 months for approval. If your locations are outside the ASF service area, though, a TSF subzone is your only option. And a subzone outside that service area can't be just anywhere. CBP requires that a subzone be within 60 miles or a 90-minute drive of the port limits. Since the FTZ is a location under customs control, the port director has to be comfortable that a CBP officer can get to the subzone quickly if the need arises. Melissa, should everyone just file subzone applications?
Possibly, Sean, unless you expect to have multiple uses. If your zone will only ever consist of one location, there's little difference between an ASF application for a zone site and an ASF application for a subzone. If your zone has more than one location, however, or if you plan to have an additional location at some point in the future, like an overflow warehouse or something, a subzone may offer some advantages in the ability to move bonded merchandise freely between the locations. It gives you more flexibility to consolidate zone administration filings. If your facility is located outside the alternative site framework service area of your closest grantee, your only option is to file a subzone application under the TSF, or traditional site framework.
The last FTZ term we should discuss is production. The FTZ board regulations say that production is defined as activity involving one of three things: either 1, the substantial transformation of a foreign article; activity involving a change in the condition of the article that changes its customs classification; or the third item is activity which changes the foreign article's eligibility for entry into the United States. If you are manufacturing or assemble a finished good from components or parts, that is clearly production activity. In a distribution warehouse, you may have kitting operations where different components aren't assembled together, but they're packaged in such a way that when they are sold as a single unit, that unit has a different classification than the components. This is also considered to be production. It is an important distinction because in order to do production activity using foreign components in your zone, you must apply for what is known as production authority. Further, in order to have production equipment benefits that Kate and Melissa talked about earlier, your zone must qualify for and use production authority.
So that should finish all the basic terms you need to know about your zone project. Now let's talk about the federal application process that gets your FTZ savings in gear. Applications are done in 2 or maybe 3 steps depending on your operation, so let's take a look at each one of those. First, you must apply to have your facility designated as an FTZ. The designation application must be filed by the grantee to the U.S. Department of Commerce through the FTZ board. If your facility is within the grantee's alternative site framework service area, this process, as we said earlier, will take about 30 days or less than. If not, your traditional site framework application will take 3 to 5 months for approval as long as U.S. Customs agrees to service the location. Next, CBP activates all or a portion of your designated FTZ site or subzone. Activation requires a written application to the U.S. Customs describing the specific activities you wish to perform in the zone. The process will involve a site visit by CBP in order to inspect the area to be designated and the procedures that the operator plans to use to ensure compliance. The FTZ area may be the same as or smaller than the area that was approved for designation. And after the process is completed, CBP issues a letter of activation outlining what activities you're permitted to undertake in the zone. And if you plan to conduct production in the zone, you must also file a production notification with the U.S. Department of Commerce. And if approved, this will allow you to do the manufacturing and kitting. All of these approvals need to be retained at the FTZ as proof of authorization and activation. Be sure to know where your signed copies are located in case you're asked to produce them during an official site visit.
Melissa, are all of these one-time applications?
No, each of these applications can be filed again anytime there's a significant change in your zone operation. So, for example, you'll need to refile your facility designation and activation applications if you make changes to the physical boundary of your foreign trade zone. You don't need to file any additional paperwork to make changes to any of the buildings located within the zone, though. But if you add components or new finished products to your manufacturing operation, you must also file an additional notification requesting approval for production activity for those new components or products.
As the government has improved the program, the areas of complexity in the process of starting up a new zone site has morphed. It used to be that the application process was very complex, requiring a lot of documentation and preparation time, and waiting months to hear if your application is approved or if CBP would activate or even support your zone. Now, that activation process has been greatly streamlined, making it much easier for companies to join the program. On the other hand, CBP electronic filing requirements have gotten more and more complex, and new procedural rules have been put in place. The automated commercial environment, ACE, that Melissa talked about earlier, from Customs and Border Protection, is used by other federal agencies that regulate imports, and those requirements have evolved and data requirements have increased. Zone operations have also become more complex as companies have incorporated more sites with varying ERP and WMS systems, all of which are networked together to collect the data needed to operate the zone. The critical path in setting up most new zones has flipped from the application process to the technology implementation, and so too has the skill set needed for bringing a new zone live. Companies used to need more advice in the area of navigating the government application process. Now new zones are far more likely to need assistance in navigating the operational design process and systems implementation process. Therefore, leveraging experience in actual FTZ operations is more important than ever when setting up your new FTZ for long-term success.
So let's talk a little more about that CBP activation process where folks in the audience are probably likely to spend most of their time when they're setting up a new zone. So during the activation process, CBP is going to focus on the security of the new site. Customs released guidelines in 2016 for bonded operations that must be met, and a CBP officer or officers will make a physical inspection of the site prior to activation to make sure, despite this pandemic. Remember, you're asking CBP to authorize you to bring foreign materials into the zone and not pay duty on it until it leaves the facility. So CBP wants to make sure that you know exactly when that material leaves and that no foreign material is going to leave without it being known, reported, and duty paid as appropriate. So during the security review, CBP is looking for ways that perpetrators might leave the facility with material or that unauthorized personnel can gain access to inventory and steal it. Site security is something that CBP looks at during your activation process, but they also look at it every time they do a site spot check. So continued diligence in these areas is very important during the entire life of an FTZ. And part of that security review also involves background checks for key personnel. In particular, personnel who have control over the inventory systems must have detailed background checks. The CBP is looking for a history of theft or violation of property rights to identify personnel that may not be appropriate for care and handling of bonded merchandise. Top management of the company applying for the zone activation are also scrutinized for an indication that they might be helping or previously involved in such activity. And then, of course, there are a few other requirements for operating an FTZ. The U.S. Customs term Inventory Control and Record Keeping System, or ICRS, refers to the system used to track and maintain inventory integrity in the zone and to provide the appropriate reporting to CBP. There's no declaration of what system this has to be, but when you activate a new zone, you must explain to CBP how you're going to use your ICRS to control your inventory from end to end. The ICRS includes not just the FTZ software that performs the FIFO inventory tracking and CBP reporting, but it also includes your ERP or WMS systems used by the facility key personnel to track day-to-day operations in the zone, because both of those are involved in the process of managing and controlling your inventory. Also needed is an FTZ operator's bond that we mentioned earlier, which is also known as an Activity Code 4 bond. This is it's basically an insurance policy CBP requires to make sure that they get paid if there are any issues with the activity in the zone. It's against this bond that CBP will issue penalties for unpaid duties if there's a problem while the merchandise is in the control of the FTZ operator. And then lastly, all FTZs must have a document called a procedures manual. And that manual must be shared with CBP at the time of activation. And if there are any changes to any procedures in that document outlines, then updates need to be shared with CBP Port Director. CBP actually keeps a copy of the manual on file at their offices. And there are some port directors that will bring their copy of the manual when they come out for a site check. They'll want to review procedures based on their copy to make sure their copies are being kept up to date. The manual will form the backbone of future spot checks and site reviews by Customs and Border Protection. So, Sean, once the site's activated, what's it like operating in an FTZ?
There will be changes to some company procedures once operations begin in the new foreign trade zone. Many importer responsibilities, however, will stay the same. For example, classification, valuation, quantity reporting requirements, and country of origin marking responsibilities do not change in a foreign trade zone. Failure to adhere to these requirements will elicit the same fines and penalties from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, just as they do under normal import procedures. Most fines and penalties experienced by FTZ operators are related to missed deadlines, which are easily detected and automatically billed by this automated commercial environment. Export reporting requirements also do not change in a foreign trade zone, including the need for any licenses that might be required for the end use or end user of your product. Customs and Border Protection is not the only U.S. federal agency with oversight of import activity, and reporting to any of those additional government agencies, referred to as participating government agencies or just PGAs, is still required in most instances. When activating a new FTZ, the goal is to maintain operations using the same internal procedures as before the FTZ designation. We don't want to have a large impact on the operation so that compliance is as natural as possible to the workforce. The reason for being in this program is to save your company money, so we don't want to lessen that benefit by a major disruption in operations. The biggest change when operating an FTZ really is in the information flow and the timing of providing data to CBP. Also, in order to avoid paying duty on your merchandise coming to the zone, your merchandise must arrive in bond, which will be coordinated with your transportation providers.
Okay, so we gave a lot more information there. Let's do another quick polling check just to make sure everybody's still with us. So hearkening back to something we talked about earlier, since FTZ 121 is organized under ASF, how long will it take for you to designate your facility as a zone if you're within the service area? Do you remember how long that this can be accomplished here in FTZ 121? See, everybody's thinking about it. Oh, here we go. Here's some votes coming in. Okay. Give you just a couple more seconds. I think some folks are still thinking about it. So remember, 121 is under ASF, so how long would it take you to designate your facility? All right, I think I have maybe everybody. Let me share the results. So we had a wide range of answers, but the answer to the question is actually within 30 days. If you're within that ASF area, within the alternative site framework, we mean, you can have your facility designated as a zone site or subzone within 30 days. And then once designated, you'll still need to activate your site with U.S. Customs to begin generating zone benefits. So that might be why some of you answered a little bit longer. We were just talking about the designation in this question. And even if your site's not within the ASF area, just to remember, you may still be able to designate your site if U.S. Customs will support the location. And of course, Kate can help you through this entire process. All right, so let's just do a quick recap and then we can answer some questions. So companies disadvantaged by inverted tariffs should take a closer look at the program. And this includes manufacturing and assembly operations and even warehouses and distribution companies that kit or do light assembly in their facilities are all possible benefactors. Companies that qualify for weekly entry filing can also reduce the administrative taxes and fees associated with import operations. Duties and fees, including anti-dumping, Section 301 and Section 232 duties, are deferred while merchandise is held within a zone. And those duties can be eliminated if the merchandise is exported, becomes scrap or waste, or is destroyed in the zone. So the ability to defer all types of duties is a big attraction to companies doing e-commerce fulfillment in particular. Foreign trade zones do have unique security and filing requirements. Most filings are now electronic, which makes technology an essential consideration in any FTZ implementation. Oh, I see Sean's gone. Now that Sean's not here, I just wanted to let everyone know that my RIT Tigers had their own sweetheart run to the Frozen Four in 2010. So I just couldn't let Sean be the only one showing alma mater pride there. All right, Kate, let's do one last poll and see what our audience next steps are going to be right before we go into some Q&A. So I'm going to launch, let's see. Now that you've had all this great information about FTZs, what are you ready to take your next steps? Maybe you are ready to tell your clients, those of you that are in economic development or in the service industries, about having your clients call Kate, or maybe you have a whole bunch more questions and you'd like to do a one-on-one session that we talked about earlier. We can certainly organize a one-on-one call and talk about your company's specifics. Some of you may be ready to take this back to your companies and talk it over and see what your options might be. And we heard earlier that some folks are ready to get started. So we hope some of you, even after this webinar, are still interested in calling Kate and getting your application going. And some of you may be still undecided. I see we're still giving you just a couple more seconds for everybody to vote on what their next steps are. All right. So it looks like, Kate, some folks are ready to give your contact information over to their clients. So I'm glad we got that posted up on the screen there for them. Some want to stay updated. I would say on your screen there is a link there to FTZ specific magazine called the FTZ. You can follow that link and sign up and stay up to date on current FTZ operations. And it looks like we have a couple of folks that are interested in that one-on-one session. So Kate, you have a few words maybe before we get into Q&A mode. Looks like you've got some follow-up actions that you'll be taking after the webinar.
That's great. And first I want to thank you both, Melissa and Sean, for I think a great overview. And I think people are getting the sense, if they weren't familiar with it, there is some real substance to the program and things to be aware of. So a couple of things for you to consider as next steps. One is that this recorded webinar will be made available to you. So again, our thought is that it's an excellent way to have someone communicate it verbally and walk through some of these terms and understanding of items. So if from this actual run through of FTZ, you want to kind of refer back to things or forward it on to people who may have an interest in FTZ, that webinar I think is an excellent thing for you to have. Some other things to mention is, as you see on the slide here, capitalregionftz.com. That is our FTZ 121 focus webpage. And from there, you can find a lot of reference material in terms of what was discussed today. Also, a really critical next step is probably the understanding financially if this is the program for you. The program's all about saving money and the other benefits that were mentioned. So there is a calculator on our website, which you can utilize with information from your direct company proceedings and your operations to plug in and see initially kind of the equivalent of a back of the envelope sketch in terms of whether or not this program potentially could really be worthwhile in pursuing to see some of those benefits. As you can tell, there are benefits that tie users such as AMRI for many years to the program to be able to enjoy that year in, year out. So I think it really provides benefits to a diverse number of situations and can be fulfilled. So what we're going to do now is we want to make sure to go over to our questions. We've already received a couple in the chat and the Q&A. And just as a note, we have not only Sean and Melissa, myself as grantee or represent the grantee side of things, but we also have Megan Daly and Katie Newcomb from CEG and the Port of Albany to answer any questions you might have specifically to them. So I'll go in order and we'll do the 2 questions that came in. I'll read them out loud. I can also turn you on verbally. So if you raise your hand, I can see that and turn it on so you can ask your question directly. So however you see fit to ask your question. The first one we have is from Malik Harris. Hi, Malik. It's nice to hear from you. If importing from a foreign country and you manipulate goods at the FTZ site, ship to the US, business the finished product, a bottled drink using from a FTZ site, is this a qualified usage when requesting access to the FTZ program? Melissa, Sean, are you clear on
that's a good question.
Okay.
I think so. So if I understand Malik's question correctly, you're asking, can you bring, sounds like some food products, right? Like maybe concentrate or fruits or something that you're making a bottled drink, or maybe flavorings, and maybe you're importing some of those things. This is absolutely a use of the Foreign Trade Zone program. If those inputs are being brought from a non-U.S. location. Being a food product in particular, there are some FDA considerations. Sean talked earlier about those participating government agencies. So if you're importing food products, you're already aware of working with Food and Drug Administration here in the U.S. And so they do also control the goods that are coming into a foreign trade zone. So there's some considerations there. But it is an opportunity to take a look at both the tariffs that you're paying on those imported inputs, and then we could also look at the production process that you're undertaking in terms of creating the drink and bottling it to see if there are inverted tariff benefits there as well.
Thank you. Malik, please let us know if you have additional questions. Let's see, I can allow you to talk. So please chime in if there's anything else, anything further. Let's go to the second question in the meantime from Jackson Strong. This is in the chat. So Jackson asks us, how do imported containers arrive directly to an FTZ without clearing customs at the port of arrival? Can containers be shipped up via barge from the Port of Newark, be transloaded at Port of Albany, and transferred to the FTZ facility prior to customs clearance? Great question.
That is a great question. We touched on it briefly towards kind of the end of the webinar, but in essence, this is that change in information flow that Sean talked about. And so today you file your customs entry and then the goods travel freely. In an FTZ environment, the only thing that changes is that movement to your zone has to be in bonded status. And so as you're talking about these different steps, via barge and then being transloaded, we just take a look at that transportation cycle and make sure that we have an entity that's willing to bond that transport through those multiple steps. But you have 30 days to get that material from your original port of unlading through the step process of getting it to your FTZ. And if there are steps in between, including transferring to different port locations, et cetera, then you can chain those in-bond transports from point to point all the way up to your zone.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, can I ask a quick follow-up to that question?
Sure.
Because I'm more on the logistics side, but my question, the reason why I asked that question particularly about the container is because a lot of the dwell time at the Port of Newark or any ports in general are that customs clearance. So if you're able to kind of bypass the customs clearance at the large port, could that potentially facilitate a faster shipment of the containerized goods?
Yep, so that's that direct delivery benefit that I mentioned in the webinar. So that is one of the privileges that you request from customs when you go through your activation process with them. And so they'll have CBP will have some questions about the goods and that sort of thing. But once you're approved for direct delivery, that gives you the ability to file the in-bond actually prior to arrival. So you'll know before the goods get there whether or not your bond is approved, your in bond is approved, and then as soon as the goods are unladen off the ship, they can move.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
Do you mind if I just add a quick note? Hi, Jackson. It's Megan Daly from the Port of Albany. You may already know this, but the Port of Albany does have the bonded capacity. So if that is something that you wanted to work with the Port of Albany, and you're not in contact with either our stevedore team or our maritime manager or customs that's right at the Port of Albany, we could help you with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? I was curious if any of the representation from our economic development groups, either local or regional, if you have any thoughts about materials that make it easier for you to communicate to potential users of the program. Are there any needs you see or any thoughts in terms of how to communicate that to local companies, businesses that could take advantage of the program?
That's a great question.
Well, that's one we can follow up with as well. So, you know, please keep that in mind if there's additional materials. Obviously, this webinar is introductory and meant to really cover a lot of ground initially about the program and be a jumping off point. So I'll just mention a couple next steps. We shared the resources that are available to you. So along the lines of some of you who answered wanting to continue to learn more, what Melissa mentioned as the resource to FTZ Zine, how you pronounce that, sorry, is available to you, as well as the Capital Region FTZ.com website. Please check those out as well. You can also contact me directly for any further information as things sink in from the session, questions percolate, or say you speak with someone that you think this may be a fit. Again, please keep this in mind. We really want to provide initial awareness and then build on that into the future. So with that said, are there any other questions? Oh, thank you, Melissa. I'm seeing in your comments, and she's from the town of Glenville, a one-page to email or social media link would help. That's a great idea. So that's something that I can follow up with as a way to kind of communicate. As you can see, there's a lot to pack into a one-page content item such as this, but that's a fantastic idea, and we'll see what we can do for that. Okay. Any other follow-up?
I don't know if you saw, Kate,
go ahead, Melissa.
There was a Q&A from Connor who asks, could you offer another example of inverted tariffs? Yeah, so this is a little bit of a tricky concept. So it helps to go through multiple examples for sure. So let's take kind of an old standby. So I did a really simple tire, but another industry that leverages the FTZ program quite heavily is automotive. So you have a situation where engines, for example, is a very high rate of duty product, but a completed vehicle is a lower duty rated product. So I don't know, I can't remember the exact numbers, so I'm going to make up some numbers, but it is on the order of an engine might be at a 6% rate, whereas a car is closer to 3.5 or 4% duty rate. And so you may have examples where maybe you have multiple components going into that car. So the engine might be 6%, the tires we talked about earlier are 2.5, or the tires are 4, the wheel assemblies are 2.5. You've got radios going in there. A lot of these different components, the chips that we've all been hearing about, could be imported components. All of those can be brought into the FTZ without paying duty, assembled into a car, and when that car rolls off the assembly line, every foreign component that went into that car, rather than paying their higher duty rate of 6 or 4.5 or whatever it might be, is going to be paid at that lower car duty rate, 3.5%. You can also do some mechanisms within the zone. So if you're bringing in products that are lower, like, I don't know, let's say your electrical wires are at 1%. I'm making that one up. But you can actually make sure that you don't invert and you pay the lower duty rate on any components that happen to be at a lower rate than that finished car. So you are able to do that. And then one last point that I always want to make sure everybody knows is you can also bring in domestic sourced products, right? So not everything in that car was purchased from a foreign supplier. Many of them are U.S. suppliers in which case no duty is paid at all on those components either. So when we're talking about inverting these different duty rates, we're only talking about componentry that comes from a non-U.S. source, but you can definitely bring in domestically sourced products into your zone and commingle them in that manufacturing process. So I hope that helps answer some of your questions, Connor.
Thank you. That's great. And the next one's from Michael Lobsinger from CEG. We definitely need to try and get more manufacturers on the call. I think maybe we can start with surveying some to find out if they are part of the program already and if they are aware. One of our most recent surveys shows that many SMEs are not importing. So that's an excellent point, Michael. So I completely agree. We all agree with you in terms of trying to directly reach manufacturers who could benefit from this program, who have that import component. So perhaps we could talk more offline and discuss your thoughts on. Michael is a great contact and works regularly with the manufacturing community. So would definitely welcome additional thoughts such as you offered here and ways that we can kind of keep providing that outreach directly to those who could benefit. So thanks for your thoughts there. Great. So any other comments or questions from the audience? I'm gonna do it going once, going twice. And again, this is the beginning of the conversation. So we'll reach out with the email, the recording, so you have that in hand. Please feel free to use that. Reach out with any questions to myself, Melissa, Sean, of course, to CEG and Port of Albany, our partners on this overall FTZ program. And just please keep spreading the word on potentially the benefits that the program could offer. So I want to thank everyone for presenting in terms of our panel, and then also to everyone attending. Thanks for your attendance, your great questions, and look forward to working with you in the future. Everyone enjoy your day, and thanks for coming.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.